to start with a fascinating story that I saw this afternoon, and I believe it's maybe a correction about something which I said this morning, and an unbelievable important lesson that I'd like to share with you. The story which I read was that the Panovich Rav was in Rome, and in the middle of the night he called his driver, somebody named Moshe Watchil, and he says, "Come to me immediately, we have to go." And he says, "It's torrential rains outside, it's freezing, it's dark, it's dangerous. No, we have to go right now." And he tried to persuade the Panovich Rav to push off wherever it was that he wanted to go until tomorrow. And the Panovich Rav just wasn't willing to budge. They got into the car, and he says, "To the Arch of Triumph." The famous arch of Titus Russia came back to Rome, and it has that Latin inscription about the doom of the Jews. And we are going to be here invincible forever. This is hard to imagine. The Panovich Rav straightened himself out, walked up to the arch, and said, "You're here and I'm here." We went through Rome, the Inquisition, the Holocaust. Look at the world of Torah, misakseg, flourishing, vibrant. We are here. Where are you? Does anybody know about you? Does anybody care about you? Do you make it into the news? All you have to show for yourself is a silly gate. I'll just add that goes from nowheres to nowheres. We are here. And then he left. Unbelievable story. Couldn't he do that from home? Why did he have to go out in the rain? What was the point? I say this in reference to that which I mentioned this morning about the people who go to Auschwitz. And yes, there are those, as Mr. Beer mentioned this morning, every lady who's expecting is another Kampf to Mein Kampf. But what do you have to go there for? The Panovich Rav couldn't have said it in his hotel room. I believe that all of us, there's nobody here in this room that doesn't know about this arch. And all we do is chuckle. We know what the Panovich Rav said. I don't think anybody feels an urge to travel to Italy, which in itself is almost an obscure nation, just to prove that point. Why did he go? I read the story, aside from the fact that it sort of contradicts that which I said this morning, but I was trying to figure out what was the Panovich Rav thinking, what was he trying to convey, and to whom was he trying to convey it to? I want to share with you something that I saw in the Mikros Gedolos a few weeks ago about something which I'm not sure I have a mistake about or not. Recently, Rabbi Uri Zohar died, passed on, and it made headlines in the religious papers, even in the secular news. And there's some kind of a special attachment to the heroes of Klal Yisrael that came from being heroes elsewhere to be heroes by Klal Yisrael. From time to time, I remember not long ago, there was some kind of a play or something about a fellow who was a prince or a king or something, and he became Jewish. Also a celebrity story and people following it. And I'm sharing with you my personal thoughts. It bothered me. Why are we enamored when somebody sees the obvious? I look outside, I see that it's light, and 70% of the people in the room disagree. They say it's night. It's clear to me that 70% of the people, obviously not any of you in particular, there's something wrong with you. It is day outside. More people come into the room and say, Rabbi Zachariash, in kol hakavod. Do I waver? The answer to that question is, in the world of Teva, we all waver. And I'm going to share this with you. This lesson was taught to me by my Rabbi in 12th grade. And I'm forever internally have a debt of gratitude to him, because he ripped out of me a taiva that other people have. I don't recall exactly what was going on in the world of fashion at that time, if there was the skinny ties or the fat ties, or the big glasses or the small glasses, or the pants like this, or with pleats, without. I don't remember exactly what was going on. But as teenagers would be, this was important. I mean, if either you're in or you're passé. I don't think I have to explain this. And he walked into Shir one day and he made the following statement. You look at a picture of anybody from 10 years ago and you say, I don't know how to say this in English, Eze bushot. How could you walk around like that in pajamas? In 10 years, you look at your begad and your big day Yosef, and you'll say about what you're wearing today, Eze bushot. It's fraud, brainwashing. Do you really think that what you're wearing is really nice? He took away all taiva for fashion from me. I'm not going to let some guy in France manipulate my brain. I'm a bigger balgaiva than that. It's just not going to happen. The average person is affected by the environment around him. And a person who doesn't acknowledge that is fooling himself. So if 1,000 people would come into this room and say, Rabbi Zachariash, it's dark outside, it's night outside, you must have some problem with your eyes, how long would it take until I went to see the eye doctor? I'm not going to share with you my thoughts. But this mashal is a mashal I heard from our yeshivas, should be well, to explain something about our grandfather. Our grandfather, Avrohom Avinu. He was called Ha'ivri, because the whole world is on one side. They all believed in Avodah Zarah, and he said, you guys are crazy. Yesh Bal Bira. There's one omnipotent force that created the world and sustains it. And all the people in the world couldn't talk him down. I also understood, inherited this koach from Avrohom Avinu. All the nations in the world say that to be Jewish is dumb. It's a religion that's passé. Does it affect us? As a nation, no. We've persevered. We're the longest standing religion in the world. We may be small, but we're vibrant. And this is what I believe was part of our Messiah. We don't need other people to applaud us to know that what we're doing is right. And we don't need others to tell us that what others are doing is wrong. We know what we know because we know. And as the Ramban tells us, a father doesn't tell over to his children lies, and we believe. We believe in Har Sinai, just as if we were there because it was told to us through our Messiah. We're the only religion which claims to have its birth in a supernatural way that was seen by the masses. There is no other religion that has such a claim. I'm not here on a discovery program. I think everything I'm saying over here, everybody here knows. So why do we need Uri Zohar to make us feel good that we're religious? It hurt me. It's a good gimmick to get irreligious people to become religious. It may be good to show to the Goyim. But is it important for us or not? And the week that he was nifter, as I was going through the Chumash, I came across a Medrash which seems to say that it's good for us too. This exact idea. And there's a bit of terminology in that Medrash which is unclear. And I felt that was in a gambit over, because I had an opinion before I saw this. And I went around to my colleagues and I asked them, which way is it saying? Is it saying that it's good for us so that we can persuade others, or is it good for us for ourselves? 50-50. So if it's 50-50, I would like to consider myself the one to tip the scale in my faith, in my direction, and say it's not for us. It's just for others. But that's in the world of absolutes. That's where we have shifot, to be in a place that we're not affected at all. A person who's not affected at all has to be really, really very, very strong. What does it mean to be affected? The Beis Halevi says that if you want to know the tchunot, the natural tendencies of a human being, you have to look at him within the first few minutes of his birth. Because afterwards he was already affected by his environment. We could be the Vilna Gaon, we could be the Kotzker Rebbe, and we can fight to be an individual. And I believe, and I still believe, that that's what we're supposed to do. But for most of us, being able to have that extra pat on the back may be helpful. But I believe that it goes a little bit deeper. The Chafetz Chaim, who goes down in history as the tzaddik, was the Gadol Hador in Psak. How do I know that he was a Gadol Hador in Psak? Because Reb Chaim Oizer, the Gadol Hador in Psak, in discussing a question which he's uncertain, he says, Kfar Hoira Belakute Halachas. The Chafetz Chaim already 30 years before, he already was machriya on this question. Chafetz Chaim said, that's the end. So Rabbi Chaim Oitzer considers him the bottom line. I can follow suit. Chavetz Chaim, in his genius, and part of the genius which I grappled to understand was his ability to be such a simple person and explain things to a way that a child would understand it, to pack it all in. The Chavetz Chaim used to talk to himself. And by talking to himself, it became clearer. The Panuach, when he stood there in front of the arch, my suggestion is, Ze mechazek oto. Now we all understand that there's nobody there by the arch and there's actually no difference. And it doesn't change what he believes. But the mere action of doing it will have an effect. I want to share with you another story. And these stories, I believe, are stories to give us koach to go on. "99 years ago, 90-something years ago, take that back, I think 94 years ago, was the Hebron massacre. And it was a very demoralizing situation to the people that were there. It happened in Yutes Av, if I'm not mistaken. And it came Yom Narayim, the morale of the Bochrim just wasn't what it was supposed to be. And the Mashkiach went to one of the Bochrim and he said, "I want you to daven Meir for the Omid." And the Bocher looked at the Mashkiach in shock. A Bocher? A Bocher? Supposed to be married? Supposed to have children? There's no place for me. And the Mashkiach said, "I want you." And he davened for the Omid. He must have had a pleasant voice. But this was an enigma. People didn't understand what does the Mashkiach want. He said, "Mar Avrohom, Ahavas." And they're waiting for him to finish off Ahavas. And they don't hear anything. And they're waiting. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then they see this Bocher's talis is shaking. And he croaks out, "Va'avoscha al tosir bimenu lo ilomim." Imagine a person in the situation that he sees his loved ones, his chavrusas, his friends butchered in front of his eyes. He's standing b'yom HaKodesh lefnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu, and he can muster up to say, "Kol zeh shavali," I would do it again. V'havoscha, I understand that this is an expression of your love to me. Al tosir mimenu lo olamim. Even in such a situation. And as the other Bachrim in the yeshiva heard him saying this, they started to sing along. V'havoscha al tosir mimenu lo olamim. The Mashkiach, after Ma'ariv, went over to him and said, "Dosa bich gemeint." This is exactly the reason why I chose you to be the chazan. We read the stories in Kinnis. the Medrashim. And there's something which is poetic. So it sounds to us. And I want to use an example of the Medrash of the ship with 400 girls, another ship with 400 boys, and they were destined to go to Galus for illicit usage. And they weren't certain if they were able to withstand the challenge. And they decided to die al Kiddush Hashem. The Mefarshim discuss if this is permissible, not permissible. The Kiddush itself discusses this. And then the Jewish girls jumped in first to drown themselves. And they quoted a pasuk, and then the Jewish boys did. And the Kiddush ends. How do we walk away from such a Kiddush? What's our take home? I think anybody thinks that this was a directive to teach us what we're supposed to do, what's happening around the corner. I think that this take-home message is very simple. It was clear to them what HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands from them in life. And it's also clear to them that there are things that are greater than life. The Kiddush are full of such stories. The one that comes to my mind, what can I tell you? Baruch Hashem, I had the zchus to have a Jewish upbringing till I was old enough that I was forced to go to shul. I would sit by my mother, and even at a younger age, at my grandmother, and they would say that Tzanorena, and when they would read the Medrashim, those Medrashim are part of my fiber. Chana v'sheva banel. Gemara and Anazokin. And the little boy, the last boy, says, woe is to you that it's even choshev for you, for me to fake it. I'm not going to insult you to tell you the story. I'm sure you're all familiar. Clarity. Clarity. I believe from the things that we're missing today, it's clarity. With something which is most of you a philosophical question. But I'm going to move to an area which is very, very real. I had the zchus about 35 years ago to have a Rabbi, a Yushalayim Yit. I have no other words to describe this person who is virtually unknown to history, but the Gedolei HaPoskim in his generation considered him a gem. This person, in his Ben Arum Chaveroi, was so beautiful and tahor. And his avodas Hashem was exactly the same way. I'd like to share with you an incident, somebody I learned with every single week, about Ben Arum Chaveroi and Ben Arum Lamokom. Okay, these are people just around the corner. He said once, I was Makayim the Rambam. I bought for my wife false teeth. I didn't know there was any Rambam about false teeth. I was quite puzzled. And he looked at me pathetically, was versteht Amerikaner? What does an American boy understand? He says, I would never buy for myself false teeth. What do you need false teeth for? So you can't choose or don't eat that kind of food. But the Rambam says, Yichabdeu yoyser migufay. You should do more for your wife than you do for yourself. I found an opportunity to do something for my wife that I wouldn't do for myself. And he was ecstatic. The last year of his life, he was under strict doctor's orders that he must eat and drink. And the place where I was davening on Yom Kippur was about a 5-minute walk to his house. And I decided, Bikur Cholim is a choshev mitzvah, a man that I'm close to. It will be for me an extra schus to be mevaker choyle him on Yom HaKodesh. Speak about a man who was 85 at the time. In truth, I walked away from that visit a different person. I knocked on his door, and I came in, and I caught him with a cup in his hand, and the big clock in front of him, drinking. It was obvious, we all understood that he was allowed to drink, there was no question. Well, unless he said, this is my mitzvah today. You have your Yom Kippur, this is my Yom Kippur today. And he was ha'oived Hashem with his eating and drinking on Yom Kippur. I don't think I ever saw anybody drink with such kedusha. It was unbelievable. But this Rabbi of mine, one time discussed with me, when someone comes to ask you a question, is your job to be machmer, or is your job to be mekel? There are many questions that can go both ways. What is supposed to be your default position? Fascinating question. Many times, and twice today, I had questions that this thought crossed my mind. Somebody asked me, today's Tisha B'Av, I wouldn't usually travel, but I have a ride. So I said, so? I must have missed something, but I have a ride. So as you people know, I'm not such a nice guy. I said, which halacha are you concerned with? You're allowed to take a ride on Tisha B'Av, right? Basically, that's what I said. Is it the right thing to do to take a ride on Tisha B'Av? So I answered the question with honesty. I said, why are you asking the question? If you know that there's no direct isser, because is it the right thing to do? So I said, if you're asking the question, that means you know that it's not the right thing to do. Otherwise you wouldn't be asking the question. You want me to tell you it's the right thing to do to take a ride on Tisha B'Av? More or less, that's where the conversation went. Then I had another phone call this afternoon. Almost a similar question. I'm not going to bore you with the details. But if you understand enough that it's a question, then don't you understand the answer? If you have have that sensitivity, do you want to lose it? How many rides on Tisha B'Av do you have to take to become something totally different? I'm going to share with you one other question that was asked today in the afternoon. Before I get back, what I'd like to say. Somebody was nifter in Chutz La'aretz. They have a sister who's 90 years old, and for whatever reason it may be, she would like to come with the Aron to Eretz Yisrael. However, her medical condition seems to demand, and this is not a halachic share, that if she's going to fly, just go from one city to another city, to Levaya, then back to New York, and then to fly, she may have to eat on Tisha B'Av. What's the halacha in such a situation? It happens to be that Moshe Feinstein almost discusses this exact situation. About a person putting himself into a situation which is going to cause him to have to break his fast, if he's allowed to. And Ramosha gives a clear list, check-off list, what has to be done in order to allow it, and what has to be done if one does not fulfill those criteria. Tisha B'Av can come, Tisha B'Av can go. How do we take Tisha B'Av with us? The Panovich Rav, he stood by the Arch of Triumph. The Bocher in Chevron, he stood there as the Shliach Tzibur. What about us? What can we take with us from Tisha B'Av Tavshin Pei Beis to keep it something unique? A unique aspect of Tisha B'Av is the Isser of Limud HaTorah. In the Olam HaYeshivas, there is a Chakira, which there are different opinion of different poskim, and I would like to share with you this machlokes. The halacha is that one is not allowed to learn regular Torah, if we use that terminology, on Tisha B'Av. You're only going to learn what's called in the halachic poskim Dvar Haroyim, the stories of Kamsa Bar Kamsa, the halachas of Avelos, etc. And the question is as follows: is there a heter to learn those things, but really there's no chiyuv limud HaTorah? Or there's a chiyuv limud HaTorah, but today just learn those things? And there are many nafkaminas to this question. Again, this is not a halachic discussion. Ki hem chayenu ve'oirech yameinu. The Churban Bayis brought about a downward spiral in Torah. This is most well known by the Lishkas Hagozis, the Sanhedrin, abutted the Beis Hamikdash, and the Medrashim are full of this concept. Ki mitzion teitzei Soira. The Churban is in Torah too. However, there's something amazing. The Yerushalmi tells us, Gemara in Megillah brings us down, after the Churban Bayis and HaKadosh Baruch Hu el Dar Amo Shel Halachah. After the Churban, the only safe haven, so to speak, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in this world is in the Beis Medrash. And this is explained that in Torah there is no Avelus. Because in Torah there is no Churban. There's something about Torah which defies the Churban. In the Olam Chassidus, different branches have different approaches to the reason that siyumim are made in the 9 days. Some say it's because it brings about Ahavas Yisrael. And there are others who say that it has to do with this concept of chiseling away at the Churban by Limud HaTorah. It's not for naught the parallel between the kinnos of the Beis Hamikdash and the Crusade, Inquisition. Torah and mitzvahs and avodah are all the same. It's a triangle. It's a triangle. When we mourn one of the aspects of the avodah, it demands a chizuk in the other aspects. I heard once from someone, B'Shua Portnoy, fascinating idea. The Gemara says that if somebody dies and he's a chelek of a chabura, yidagu kol ha-chabura. All the people in that group, the simple meaning is, have to be afraid. There's a midas adin on them. But he said something else. If you have, and I'll use the gory example, people are carrying the mita to be brought to its menucha seilomim. And there's 7 people, 8 people that are holding. One person lets go. The weight is distributed, but to the other 6. Klal Yisrael is a movement. When one person is lost, all the others have to pick up the slack. The Chabura is doing something. When there's one member that's not here, we have to chip in together to fill the void. When we mourn the loss of one of the Amudim, the Amud of Avodah, it demands that our Torah be nischazik. It demands that our chesed be nischazik. So you can't walk away and bring a korban tomorrow. But you can walk away with another 5 minutes. As we stand at the end of Tisha B'Av, each and every one of us, before our personal Yetzer Hara. Our personal Yetzer Hara, we could probably call it the triumphant gate of Titus. It has knocked us down so many times. We stand there like the Panovich Yerov, and we say today, you may have knocked me down before, but I'm still here, and I'm going forward. May we be zeicha to take the lessons of this Tisha B'Av as we move forward, Emir Hashem, We should be zoicha to see the bias goyal b'mehera.